Happy Halloween, everybody! This is a video that I've tentatively had in the making for the last couple months, ever since I saw the 2024 remake of The Crow at the end of August. But then I wanted to extend that out to a part 2 when I saw Beetlejuice Beetlejuice in September, and then I decided, you know what? It would be a good topic for a Halloween video, so I'll just do that. But today I want to talk about, I'm not going to say a common misconception, but a misconception that was made by the director Rupert Sanders, the director of the new Crow movie, and how that really just rubbed me the wrong way. I think he meant it in all sincerity. He didn't mean to be rude, but as a Gen Z, it bugged me, especially as a Y2K Gen Z. And why I think Beetlejuice Beetlejuice was a good example of how wrong he really was. Sorry, there's a motorcycle outside. But anyway, let's start at the beginning. So, I actually had no idea that there was a Crow remake in the works until I watched a video of someone reacting to Bill Skarsgård's new look from a channel I occasionally visit, and my first indication was, are we really gonna try this? Because I knew what The Crow was. As you can see, this is my mom's VHS copy of the original Brandon Lee Crow right here. And even before I had seen that movie, she had told me what had happened to Brandon Lee and the tragedy surrounding his passing. Rest in peace. So, that was very much in the forefront of my brain when I found out that the Crow remake was a thing, and I was going, okay. And then I saw the trailer in theaters. I can't remember first time I saw it. It might have been with, I can't remember. Might have been Longlegs. I don't know. But I saw that and I was kind of like, yeah. And then we saw Bill Skarsgård. I was kind of like, okay, this could be decent-ish. So I decided to look a little bit more into it. And then I found out what Rupert Sanders had to say about it. And why Bill Skarsgård's Crow looked kind of as he did. According to Cinema Blend, this is what he said, officially. The Crow remake director Rupert Sanders admitted in the Vanity Fair piece that he recognized the character's look in his film as a departure from the OG movie's iconic look. The character in this new film is a mixture of a 90s raver as well as more modern celebs like Post Malone. The ultimate goal is to create a hero that appeals to the Gen Z audience, which means he can't exactly look like a 90s goth rocker. And it's safe to say that when I found out about that, I was kind of rubbed the wrong way as a Gen Z who was born in 1999. But I did end up deciding to give the movie a chance at the end of the day. So I said, partially because I found out there was going to be a whole ass fight scene in an opera house, and the year before that I had spent John Wick Chapter 4, fingers crossed, going, oh my god, what if while John Wick is in Paris, he fights some people at an opera house? Because if you haven't noticed, a large theme of my channel, running theme of my channel, is I'm a Phantom of the Opera fan. So, finding out that The Crow was going to fulfill that for me, I said, okay, I might just watch it for that alone. And, well, I came out with that movie with a lot of thoughts. And yes, I did know beforehand of its piss-poor Rotten Tomatoes score. Rhymed. But I said, hey, maybe I'll like it because it'll appeal to me on a me level. Like, maybe I'll like the love story. Well, I wrote a whole page of everything I felt about it that night. So, let's go over some of them, shall we? Where shall we start? Well, let's talk about what my dad and I, because I saw it with my dad, our first thoughts both coming out of the theater. My thought process was, this isn't a post-John Wick era, motherfucker! Without F-bombing. And my dad's review was, The Crow on steroids. That should probably tell you. But I think there were some positives I had out of it. Like, I kind of thought it being interesting that Eric's self-healing was slow moving until he fully accepted being the Crow. I thought that was not bad. I thought the death of Shelley was bloodless but emotionally brutal, whereas where everyone Eric kills in her name is very brutal. The Opera House action scene was worth the price of admission. Let's see. The fact that the Opera House scene itself was very over-the-top fun with its ridiculousness, and then it had this quiet ending of Shelley in the audience, seemingly shocked, as Eric presents the heads of two of his kills before he throws them out into the stands, and then lifts a bouquet of white lilies, which was supposed to be representative of her. And also, because I had done some research on the Crow franchise before I saw this movie, credit to Yarzade and In Frame Out for their videos on the Crow sequels. I actually did notice some nods to the sequels that I'm not sure everyone else picked up on. Like the tattoo artist in the foreshadow sketches from City of Angels. There was a crooked cop working with the villains like in Salvation. And the fact that Eric had a background of growing up in a trailer in the desert, that reminded me of the infamous Wicked Prayer. And hell, there was even some stuff that appealed to me as a Phantom fan. And not just the fact that his name was Eric and he was fighting people in an opera house, but like I said, that was enough to sell me. I was like, hey, you sold me. I will give this movie my money. However, what was I think especially disappointing about this film, aside from the whole, Gen Zs don't like Goths anymore, which we'll get to in a minute, is that the love story was very lacking. I wanted to get invested in Eric and Shelley, but considering this whole story is centered around Eric's love for Shelley, there was just so much disjointed editing in that setup of the story that I didn't have time to really sit down with them and feel connected to them. And hell, even the fact that they were being described in promos as soulmates, I thought that was going to mean something more. Like, I don't know, maybe they were two destined people who found each other, and Eric is brought back as the Crow because his soulmate, his literal destined soulmate, was ripped away from him or something. But nope, they just called them soulmates, and I was like, yeah, I'm not really getting that vibe. I'm sorry. Not to mention there's the unexplored ideas like Eric's past, which really did nothing. Or the fact that he could foreshadow things in the drawings. The villain we know almost nothing about. Of course, then I also found out that this movie was also represented by Davis Films and had the involvement of Hadida brothers from Silent Hill, which I was kind of initially had to go, hey, because I personally like the Silent Hill 2006. And I even consider Silent Hill Revelation one of my guilty pleasures. But again, it didn't really amount to much. But most importantly, we need to talk about the fact that Eric is not Goth. And why that frustrates me as a Gen Z. Because look, there are even a couple of points. There's even a point in the movie where Shelley even straight up says, "Will angsty teens mourn us?" Which does feel like a bit of a self-awareness moment, but also felt like a clear attempt to try to relate to the audience, going, what the Steve Buscemi meme of the "How do you do, fellow kids?" It's like, yeah, no. And also, can we please stop with the trend of making modern monster adaptations have tattoos and consider that edgy. I already found out about the Frankenstein movie that's going to be coming out soon, where Frankenstein has a tattoo on his chest or whatever that says hope. And someone I follow who's a fan of the opera fan said, if they do this to Eric, as in the Phantom Eric, I'm gonna jump out the window. And it's like, yeah, can we please stop pretending that tattoos are edgy? I mean, I don't personally mind tattoos. I think they're fine. But I very much have like a tasteful preference for tattoos, like in tasteful areas, like the arm, front or back of the shoulder, anything. But once they just start leaving, they just going up the neck and above, that's where I just tune out. And so it's safe to say I was not a fan of that for Bill Skarsgård's Eric. I was just like, that's just not appealing to me. And the fact that Rupert Sanders directly credits Post Malone, and I've also seen the Little Peep mentioned, that just tells you everything you need to know. And it's like, dude, I like Post Malone. I've listened to a couple of his songs, but that does not mean I'm a fan of his look. So I was just like, no. It's like, what was wrong with the goth thing? I mean, if you watch some of the Crow sequels, and you'll see how a couple of them tried to do the same, tried to do the goth thing, but in a way that didn't work like Brendan Lee's, but in a way that was very try-hard, especially Wicked Prayer, where, I kid you not, he apparently draws his eye makeup with a Sharpie. That did feel very edgy, try-hard of the 2000s, just going like, oh yeah, I'm an emo goth guy, let's go. But I still prefer that over what they did in this movie, because, oh no, guess what? I'm a Gen Z who likes goths. I grew up in that period. I was born in 1999. So I have a dad who loves The Matrix and showed that to me when I was 12 or 13 years old, and it was actually one of my first introductions to the action genre, which before that point I thought as a girly girl, I thought that was primarily for boys, but I ended up really liking it. I was like, wow, everyone dresses in black and everything's all black and green, and we got a badass power couple who kicks butt. I love it. So, even if I did not entirely understand its themes, but that appealed to me. But before I even got to that point in my life, I have a mom who loves goth stuff. She has a very autumnal color palette, but black was one of her favorite colors. Halloween was one of her favorite holidays. She loved horror movies, though specifically she preferred supernatural horror. And most especially, she was a Tim Burton fan. So my childhood consisted of a very, very hefty section of it devoted to appreciating Tim Burton, and subsequently, Danny Elfman. In fact, so you can see right here, we have our 20th anniversary copy of the first Beetlejuice movie, and to make my point, I decided to fish around the boxes and pulled out as many Tim Burton movies as I could, and I will show you now. We have The Nightmare Before Christmas, directed by Henry Selick of Coraline fame, which we also have over here somewhere. But yes, we have Nightmare Before Christmas. We have Batman Returns. We have, let's see, what's next? We got Sleepy Hollow, which just turned 25 this year. Yay. Let's see. We got Corpse Bride, the Walmart version with the changing cover. Let's see if it's gonna... Okay, is it gonna... Ah, darn it. I don't think it's gonna do it. Oop, there it goes. Well, it's got the cool changing cover. Oh, there it goes. The changing cover between Victor and Victoria, and Victor with Emily and the underworld creatures. And I also found out we apparently had this book, we had this illustrated story booklet that shows you a bunch of the storyboards and cool stuff like that. I didn't know we had that. I just, again, found it in a box. I was like, what? We had this cool book about it this whole time? But anyway, so that's that. Let's see. We have Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This is a good movie. We respect this movie. We also have Sweeney Todd, which I wasn't allowed to watch until I was about 14, when my mom and I actually saw a town company's production of Sweeney Todd at the local theater. Because, yeah, you know, this was very violent. So then she let me watch this movie when we saw it on stage together. And what else was I able to find? Yes, we like Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland remake. Sue us. But so far, that's why I'm able to pull out a box. But yes, I grew up with a very hefty appreciation for Tim Burton for a good part of my life. He was considered a special name in our house. And subsequently, I also learned to really appreciate Danny Elfman. To the point that I remember when we were watching Tales from the Crypt, which wasn't really my mom's favorite horror show, but she did love the intro, and she loved the Crypt Keeper. And I remember we were watching the end credits of that, and then I saw the music by Danny Elfman. I was just like, Mom, it's Danny Elfman! And I'll be honest right now, I did think his name was really funny when I was a kid, because his name was literally Elfman. Don't judge me. I was like 7, don't judge me. But, so for a while there, it was pretty good. Until Tim Burton's Dark Shadows happened. So, that was almost like a death in the family. Because my mom grew up on like the old shows. She loved Addams Family, The Munsters, Dark Shadows. She was a fan of Vincent Price movies, the old monster movies, all that fun stuff. So when she found out Tim Burton was going to be doing Dark Shadows, you can imagine she was very excited. Then she actually saw the movie, which I didn't see with her because I think I was with my dad that weekend, but I came back and she was just really bummed out. She was just going, I can't believe Tim Burton did this. What the hell? She was just super bummed out that he more or less ruined Dark Shadows for her with its weird comedic whatever it was going for. So not that we ever stopped liking him necessarily, but that definitely could have put a damper on things for us. But we did watch Frankenweenie. I know that because I also remember on Disney Channel when they had the behind the scenes talking about Frankenweenie, and they even showed you like how stop motion works. Did anyone else remember watching that? But it definitely kind of put a bit of sour mood on things where she never really quite forgave him for that. And then, well, a few years later, she did end up passing away in 2016. So, you know, that kind of put a hold on things. And I wouldn't say I necessarily outgrew Tim Burton, but I moved past that. Because a lot of that did come from my mom. Like, my dad was a fan too, but, you know, that was like my mom's domain. All the cool horror, Halloween, goth stuff, that was very largely my mom's domain. So, yeah, then Wednesday happened. And although we don't have Netflix, so I haven't actually sat down and watched it. From what I have seen of it, a lot of what I was feeling going into that film series, whatever, was going, how would my mom feel about this? Because my mom was an absolute, just like, Addams Family fan. She loved it. We had a big chair, a big wicker chair that was just like Morticia's, which I remember pointing out to her going, Mom, this just looks like just a god chair. And she goes, yes, honey, I know. Let's see if I can grab them. We got here we go. These are my mom's volume 1 and 2 complete Addams Family series. And she told me, she would tell me how when she come home from school, she would run home from school to watch The Addams Family, which, for someone who didn't like telling me how old she was, more or less hinted to me how old she was. But, sorry, Mom. She's probably going, are you calling me old? But yeah, she would tell me about how much she always wanted to be a part of their family. So I knew going into it, Tim Burton's doing The Addams Family. Oh boy. It's like, I know her. If she'd been around to see Addams Family, to see Wednesday, I know her. She would have been just like, Tim Burton, I swear to God, you better not screw this up. So I don't think she would have hated it necessarily. I don't think she would have disliked it as much as Dark Shadows, but I'm not sure she would have liked the somewhat more juvenile approach to the material, but still. But then I found out that they were making a Beetlejuice sequel. And I wouldn't say I was necessarily overly excited about it, but I was kind of like, vaguely interested, and I thought, this might be a good thing to see for Halloween, and it was coming out in my birth month, because I'm a September girl. So I was like, you know what? I think this could be fun. And I actually ended up really liking it a lot more than I thought I would. In fact, even though, the film critic in me was watching the film and critiquing it in my head, I got to this point about halfway through the film where I didn't want to be critiquing it anymore. I mean, I was kind of getting soaked up in the zaniness and Burtonisms of it all that I kind of just didn't care anymore, even though I already had criticisms that, yes, there's a lot of plot lines going on. Monica Bellucci did a lot less than I thought she would, even though she looked amazing and gave me, Queen Mara from Joseph Vargo's paintings vibes. It was like, oh my God! I was just having fun. I was just really happy. And I realized I'm really sitting down and I'm enjoying Tim Burton again. And not only that, but it technically started when we were watching the opening credits of the film. And I was like already kind of getting excited about being there, even if I will say I don't think I would put Beetlejuice as my favorite or most rewatched Tim Burton film. That would definitely have to go to a tie between Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Corpse Bride as being the most prevalent and most rewatched Burton films I can think of from my childhood, which makes sense because those came out when I was a little kid. So we were watching the opening credits, me and my dad, and Danny Elfman's name popped up, and my dad literally whispers to me, well, of course Danny Elfman did the score. And that added fuel to my growing nostalgic joy, and I replied back to him saying, well, of course, it'd be blasphemous. It would be blasphemous not to have him scoring for a Burton film. And yes, I used the word blasphemous. I'm one of those people. Which, of course, then I started to wonder, wait, are there a couple movies that he didn't do? And apparently there actually are 3. The only ones he didn't score were Ed Wood, Sweeney Todd, and Miss Peregrine. Credit to Haunted Hippie for telling me about that. But still, everyone knows that Danny Elfman and Tim Burton are almost practically synonymous together. But that just made me really happy. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm really sitting here enjoying watching a Tim Burton movie again. So by the time the movie was over, I was just really happy. Like, first I came out of the theater, and I actually saw this one girl who was dressed up like Lydia. There was a girl who dressed up as Lydia, I think primarily off the Beetlejuice musical, and I gave her a quick compliment, and my brain started to immediately think of Rupert Sanders and go, yeah, I'm assuming this is a Gen Z, and look at her dressed like a goth. Like, yeah, I think Rupert Sanders forgot that there's literally a Beetlejuice musical that has a pretty dedicated following, which I can't really say I relate to. I've never seen it. But when I got home, I was just... Well, okay, when we were driving home, and we were talking about the movie, I actually did see people with their Halloween decorations up already in a couple areas, so that was pretty cool. But when I got home, I was just filled with this absolute joy. And it's kind of hard to describe, but I think I felt in that moment just like maybe nostalgia in its purest form is the best way I could describe it, because it was just this physical feeling of just overwhelming happiness that I could feel in my chest. Like, it was like literally a physical feeling in my chest, and I just couldn't stop smiling or just feeling happy. And then I had to think about it for a minute. Then I realized I think I'm happy right now because I got to enjoy Tim Burton again, and I got to revisit that part of my life again, which had so much meaning for me when I was a little kid, and one that, like I said, I hadn't really experienced since, my mom passed away. So that made me feel really good, and I actually started to get emotional as I realized that moment. I started tearing up because I was just so happy that I got to experience that again and have an appreciation for Burton again, which I think is great because I've even seen that he's more or less like in a Renaissance period. So I have to say that I'm actually really excited to see. I'm kind of excited to see where he's going next, because this movie does, Beetlejuice to be exact, it does feel like in a lot of ways Burton kind of getting back to why he enjoys making films and kind of really getting his style back and what made him so beloved by so many of us in the first place. And yes, that includes Gen Z's Rupert. And getting to experience that, this kind of like Burton resurgence before I turned 25 at the end of September, it made it even more special for me. And I want to make a point of saying that for Rupert Sanders, I think innocent but also somewhat assuming, his assumption, that's what I mean, his assumption that Gen Zs aren't really big on Goths anymore. Let me point something out. The Crow, if you look it up on Wikipedia, The Crow 24 was considered a box office bomb, whereas Beetlejuice worldwide box office is number 7 of the top grossing movies of 2024. That should tell you how people feel about how Goths are. I mean, Beetlejuice is essentially, a Goth movie. And the fact that it came out shortly after The Crow, where, it's like, oh, Gen Zs don't like Goths anymore. And then Tim Burton really just popped in and, slapped him up the head going, do you want to know how many Gen Zs I raised? It's like, yeah, dude. It's a very funny image in my head, just imagining that. Also, it's like, speaking of which, did Rupert Sanders miss how popular Wednesday was? That hit, the number 1 Netflix streaming charts. And not to mention the whole Bloody Mary dance trend from Wednesday's dance sequence. There's plenty of goth love still to go around. And personally, I think that's a style that's going to endure for a long time. And personally, I think it's probably going to endure more than whatever, he's comparing Post Malone and Lil Peep to, which, again, I'm not familiar with their genres, so I wouldn't really know. And then personally, I'm not even sure how to describe the style tone of the 2020s. I know, the 2000s were a transitional kind of grungy period. The 2010s saw the rise of, fandom cultures and, internet social circles. So, but I'm not really sure. I mean, to me, I think the tone of the 2020s is, we're just trying to survive here, y'all. So, I'm not really entirely sure how you could appeal to that, but the love of Goths does not go away. I mean, I keep thinking about, I was thinking about the things that I grew up on, not just from Tim Burton, but we also got the enduring love of the Hex Girls from Scooby Doo. What else? We got Family Opera. Family Opera has a very loyal, dedicated fan base, and was the most popular, the longest running musical on Broadway until it closed last year. And that's pretty goth in a lot of ways. 19th century goth, but yeah, it's like, yeah, someone actually replied to me on my comment on Jeremy Johns' video, saying to me, going, yeah, it's just another example of people really don't understand Gen Zs. And it's like, yeah, I really don't think they do. Especially for those of us who, again, were born in the Y2K era period of the Gen Z. So we were in that transitional period from the what was it? The goth rocker period to the grunginess, which I know I keep saying grunge, but that's the only real way I can describe the 2000s, and then onward. So we were surrounded by a lot of that that's still stuck around. I mean, one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies is what is it? Dracula 2000, which is a movie that also very heavily leans into what was considered cool in that period. It's part of the new metal period, as I've seen it referred to as. And it's very obvious that it does that, where it's like, hey guys, look, it's Dracula 2000 for the new generation. He wears a trench coat, he goes to a Virgin record store, there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of new metal and rock bands on the soundtrack, but at least that movie does in such a way that's actually fun. Silly and ridiculous, but fun in a way that feels like a time capsule for that time. Just go, wow, this is so fun. And yeah, is it kind of trashy in some ways? Sure. But it's a way that, like, for someone who lived through that period but obviously wasn't, developed enough to actually have memories of that, it felt like a nice window of a period to go, wow, and I grew up in that, even if I was a literal toddler. So, whereas The Crow 24 tries to lean into the period of the 2020s, but just aside from its whole attempts at existing in a post John Wick period, it's just kind of like there's really not much to it. So for sure, the Brandon Lee Crow is absolutely gonna last longer than that one does. So, I think it was just, yeah, so I know this was kind of probably a mixed bag of feelings in this video, but this is just something I really wanted to talk about because that stuck with it stuck with me, the idea of that, oh, Gen Zs don't like goths, when that was a huge part of my life, and then getting to watch Beetlejuice and getting to experience that joy again of being a goth loving Gen Z. So I hope other people managed to saw this and enjoyed it. And hey, I just wanted to one more little fun fact I wanted to bring up. In my research of watching some essays about Tim Burton after I saw Beetlejuice, I found out that he and my mom were both Virgos. And not only that, but they were both literally born in the same week, a year apart from each other. Tim Burton was born August 25th, and my mom was born on August 27th, and she was only a year older than him. And that just spoke so many volumes to me. I was like, no wonder my mom loved Tim Burton so much. They're both August born Virgos. I mean, what are the odds? What are the odds of that? Plus, I got to hear that apparently on Speaking of the Addams Family, he too had stories of running home to watch the Addams Family after school, and that just kind of made me fangirl a little bit, going, oh my god, that was just like what my mom told me. So I think that's really just wanted to share that revelation because I thought that was really cool and sweet and in the spirit of Halloween. So yeah, thanks for watching and leave a comment, subscribe. I've got some more review stuff in the future. Like I'm working on a 3-part series talking about the 2004 Joel Schumacher adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. That's supposed to be, largely my little defense series for that movie. Because that is about to turn 20 years old at the end of the movie, and it's about damn time that movie gets the respect it deserves. So, keep an eye out for that, hopefully coming soon. Alright? Bye. Happy Halloween!